Welcome back to NewsX World. I'm Pia and you're watching The Focal Length, where we get you a briefing on topics from across the world. As global alliances shift, China and Russia are strengthening their strategic partnership, challenging Western dominance and redefining the global balance of power. Now, at the same time, Beijing's tensions, as well as the reset with India, as well as its push for unification with Taiwan, continue to shape regional dynamics, while relations with the United States of America remain marked by strategic rivalry. Amid all this, China is using platforms like BRICS and APEC to expand its influence and rewrite the rules of global economic governance. To talk about all of this, joining us now is a very special guest, Einar Tangen, Senior Fellow at the Center for International Governance Innovation and a leading commentator on global politics and the world economy. Based in Beijing, he specializes in China's role in global governance and urban development. He's a former lawyer and entrepreneur with decades of experience in international strategy and economic policy. Thank you so much for taking out time and speaking to you. My very first question is, how would you characterize the evolving strategic partnership between China and Russia today?
Well, Pia, it's an honor to be here. I sound much better when you say it than when I introduce myself. In terms of Russia and China, there are very practical reasons. There was obviously distrust in the 50s. There was a break apart, but incessant pressure by the United States. Russia saw it in terms of broken promises, NATO expanding into previous Soviet bloc countries, and they felt pressure. They felt insecure. And then we had Ukraine. So that put them on Washington's blacklist, as if it hadn't been there already all along. China has had its own problems with the U.S., and this has resulted in the two countries coming together. But there are synergies there that underline it. It is not just pure convenience. You have the largest resource nation in the world, which is Russia, spanning 11 time zones, and you have China, the largest manufacturing country in the world. Between them, they have a border that no one can interfere with. Right now, China's weaknesses are its dependency on raw materials, oil, minerals, etc., coming in, Malacca Straits and other areas, and then having finished goods, value-added goods, shipped out. Once again, subject to these kind of shipping things. Remember, the United States has 400 bases surrounding China. They've made it clear in white papers that they regard China as a military and economic threat, one they want to contain. So China and Russia are in the same boat in terms of having different interests than the United States, and they have strategic reasons why they should be together, and that is going to probably define this relationship for the foreseeable future.
Indeed, and now with the border tensions and competition in global supply chains, I wanted to understand from you, how do you see the future of China-India relations in both strategic and economic terms? We've also seen some sort of a reset taking place recently as well, with the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visiting Beijing, Tianjin in particular, for the SCO summit.
Well, I want to be clear. I think India and China, their future should be together, because between them, as Xi Jinping said in 2013, they will define the new century, a new Asian century. Obviously, it's part of the colonial playbook to divide and conquer, to use one Asian nation against another, as they did India, where they grew the opium, and China, where they sold it. This was crippling to both economies. India was 24% to 27% of the world's GDP prior to the British arriving, something you know, 4% after they left. So these are not countries that bear goodwill towards any other countries. They have for 600 years basically raped, robbed, and looted their way to wealth over this period of time. I think it's time that they come together. But having said that, there has been significant moves by India to come together with the U.S., AUKUS, et cetera. He said that there are shared values. But those values are being brought into question. You look at Donald Trump, his administration and the prior one, supposedly good relations with India did not stop the U.S. from active interfering in the general election. Then going into Nepal and also Bangladesh, fermenting color revolutions. And they didn't even try to hide it. So then you get into 50% tariffs, and then actively courting Pakistan and shoving India to the side. This really thinks, this whole thing with Balochistan, a highly inflammatory area on the border of India. U.S. says they're going to put $500 million into some sort of energy things. Wonder how that would even be possible. It's also where CPEC is.
Yes.
This is a flashpoint for India. So right now, India and China have an opportunity to come together based, once again, on this kind of not so nice behavior by the U.S.
Indeed, as Beijing has put it, it's a tango between the dragon and the elephant that we're looking at. Meanwhile, coming to the question of Taiwan itself, China has made it very clear that unification with Taiwan is a core national priority. Do you then believe that a military confrontation is inevitable, as some experts are assessing, or will Beijing continue to rely on economic and diplomatic pressure?
Well, and don't forget geographical pressure. Taiwan is not located off the coast of the United States. It's just a few miles away from Chinese mainland, and it's considered part of China. And that's why it was kicked out of the UN. That's why the US agreed to the three communiques back in the late 70s, early 80s. Yes. This point was settled until the United States decided that it needed to contain China, and they wanted to use Taiwan, Tibet, Xinjiang, Hong Kong, and even now Mongolia and Xinjiang to try to, gum it up. Figure out some way of diverting attention from China's economic miracle so that they have to put more money into defense. And, the U.S. was thinking, we can get them in the same position we got the USSR in. But the USSR and China, very, very different animals. So at this point, the U.S. ideas about fermenting some sort of action in Taiwan, they vacillate depending on the administration. The flashpoint comes if any party in Taiwan announces that they are truly independent. That would force China's hand in their mind. And if the U.S. started sending aggressive weapons that had the ability to reach Beijing and threaten it, that would also be a flashpoint. So there are potential flashpoints, but I don't think anybody wants a war like that. Taking over Taiwan by force is not something that China is looking for. They prefer a peaceful means of reunification. They see each other not as them and us, but as us. Our cousins, people who hail originally from the mainland, who still have strong family ties. And don't forget, somewhere around 37% of all Taiwanese business is related to the China mainland.
Indeed, and speaking of flashpoints between the United States and China as well, we've seen tensions simmering between Washington and Beijing for quite a while now, especially with the second Trump administration, the steep tariffs that Donald Trump is imposing. We've seen China recently as well, including imposing some restrictions on rare earth minerals. Washington has now threatened to invoke 100% tariffs over and above the 30% that already exists. There's a simultaneous race that is taking place in the technological sphere as well. I wanted to understand from you, do you then see any real possibility of stabilization or cooperation, especially in technology and trade? Do you see this situation stabilizing? What are your expectations from the Trump-Xi meeting that is on the anvil in South Korea?
Well, Pia, you've asked a number of questions. I think the best way of doing it is what are the outcomes going to be? The inputs are very simple. Donald Trump likes to flail. He likes to make grand announcements and then live up to his nickname, which is Taco. Trump always chickens out. It's kind of odd about that, Pia, is that his Commerce Secretary Lutnick is out there saying 100% tariffs. Well, you don't, at 100% tariffs, there is no trade. It's too much. No one is making that kind of money where they can afford to pay those kinds of tariffs. And we're talking about American people, not other countries. But his children, his two sons, are actively involved in what's called the taco trade. And e.g., they are putting together instruments that allow people to bet that whatever Donald Trump says, he'll have to reverse on. That's just a side note, but it goes to this issue that no one really knows what's going on in Washington. Donald Trump goes from day to day and thinks. So what are the outcomes? I'm saying this because China has been studying Donald Trump for 8 years. They were surprised the first time around because they always expect U.S. presidents to talk tough about China before the election, but after the election, because it's a Gordian knot. The relationship between these countries is too deep and to separate easily. It would take years and billions of dollars to do that. And there is not enough time or enough money in the U.S. To get that done. So they usually don't. But Trump continued ahead. So now we're here in the second administration. It's been an eventful 11 months. I think you do that. From China's perspective, they see this as lasting out another 3 years and 2 months with Donald Trump. The only way you can do that is play for time. So they are slow playing. They are going to give him a small victory, probably something like phase 2, where he gets to say, I got a deal for, China's going to buy soybeans and they're going to buy some, whatever, energy from U.S. and things like that. That'll be his victory. But he's not going to get unrestricted access to rare earth elements. Chinese are adamantly, they're not going to give bullets to somebody who says, I want to kill you. That is a no-go line. They might allow dual use, certainly allow commercial use, but they are not going to allow the U.S. to build weapons that they can threaten China with.
Absolutely. China has drawn its red lines. Speaking of certain multilateral organizations that we're now seeing, their momentum increasing, including BRICS and APEC. I want to understand from you, how is China using these forums in order to redefine global economic governance, especially in uncertain times where the U.S. is wielding tariffs as a weapon?
Well, Pia, I think it's a mistake to fall into the trap of thinking that today is like the past. In the past, it was always about what the U.S. was doing with its various organizations, whether it's the World Bank or the IMF or interference in the UN. I think today, and India's part of BRICS, and a very important part. This is not something where one country tells the other countries what to do. That would be impossible. India would never belong to an organization where it was being dominated by another group, whether it was a group of countries or one. India is proud, separate, and it is not going to be forced into some sort of alignment. So what does that mean? You have a group where it is based on consensus. And India is at a crucial point in that consensus because they have been the ones who've been saying, let us try to make peace. Let us try to get along. Let's not take a hard line on the U.S. Do it. But that may change. When Donald Trump says to Narendra Modi, you have to open up your agricultural and dairy industries to our companies, that's political suicide. Half of India are involved in agriculture, and if they lose their livelihood, government will change. And I don't know if Trump doesn't understand this. It could be like putting bleach in your veins. But regardless of whether he understands it or not, he cannot be asking or demanding India do that, nor can he continue to insist that he's done things like created peace between Pakistan and India, insulting what he calls a friend. I mean, it was telling to me that on one day he sends a birthday greeting, a telephone, call to Narendra Modi, and the next day he asked Europe to put a 100% tariff on India. Mm-hmm. What does that tell you about long term? Telling somebody that I like you, but I'm going to destroy you doesn't make sense. We have to look at actions, not words. So at this point, these organizations, SCO, BRICS, all of these are opportunities to bring the world together and tell bullies like the United States that it's time to stop. Imagine if India were to lead the BRICS and SCO and all, no, not SCO, that's not the right group, but if they lead BRICS, get together with the EU, go to Washington and say, knock it off. Donald Trump, we're tired of it. You want to put tariffs on your people, fine, but you're not going to pit the rest of the world in some sort of colonial, cynical game where we have to play ourselves off against each other for your benefit. And that's what Donald Trump is doing. It behooves all the nations. It doesn't mean that there has to be an overall cooperation or move away from the dollar, but this is a bully. He needs to be put in his place. Modi is the guy who could do it because he's the one who has been urging restraint. He says enough is enough, becomes the leader that people need at the moment. It could be a waterfall moment, a moment when the U.S. is finally put in its place and it understands that this is a multilateral world, not a unipolar one.
Absolutely. This is something that both China and India have been emphasizing upon, even in the high-level bilateral meeting that took place between Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi. With that, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Einar Tangen, for speaking to us on The Focal Length today.
Thank you for having me, Pia.
With that, viewers, it's a wrap on this episode of The Focal Length. For more international news, updates and analysis, stay tuned on NewsX World.